Like millions of kids of the late 80s and early 90s, I grew up on a steady diet of sugary cereals and WWF wrestling. But if there was one thing I enjoyed as much as watching Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior square off on my television screen, it was playing with the Hasbro action figures. G'day guys, thanks so much for tuning in, because today I'm going to be sharing with you some vintage action figure pickups from one of my all-time favourite toy lines, the Hasbro WWF Wrestling Superstars line. Now if you're watching this, chances are you know already that the period of wrestling in the late 80s and in particular the early 90s was an era of colourful characters and over-the-top gimmicks that really pushed the limits of what the audience were willing to believe. But 10-year-old me bought every bit of it, from the action going on in the ring, to the backstage promos, to the merchandise, and in particular, the action figures, which were built by Hasbro at the time. Now the Hasbro WWF action figure line was a perfect accompaniment to wrestling at the time. These action figures, they weren't perfect in terms of scale, the face sculpts weren't exactly accurate, but they were fun, they were wacky, they were cartoony, and they really captured the spirit of the wrestlers and of the WWF at that time. Now the first action figure that we'll look at is the Series 1 1990 $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase figure. Now it's one of the last few figures that I've been hunting down to complete Series 1, so I'm happy about that. The figure's in fairly good condition, the action feature still works. We'll get to the belt in just a moment, but although Ted DiBiase was a great technical wrestler, to me personally, I remember him far more for the villainous $1 Million Man character. You know, the promos, the vignettes, the laugh, the suits, the antics. I remember Ted DiBiase far more for all those things when I think back to my childhood than I do for anything in particular that went on in the ring. But that's certainly not to say he's not an accomplished wrestler. For the period that I was following the WWF most closely, he was predominantly a tag team competitor, partnering with IRS to win and hold the tag team titles at several points, but obviously that's not the only belt Ted DiBiase wore throughout his time in the WWF. We've obviously got the $1 Million Championship, the self-proclaimed $1 Million Championship belt here. This accessory was a separate pickup. This was picked up for $1 at a toy show at some stage last year, so I've reunited the $1 Million Man with the $1 Million Championship belt. But all in all, really happy to have Ted DiBiase. Like I said, I'm now down to 1 or 2 figures to complete Series 1. So we're really happy that DiBiase is in the collection. Now we can't talk about Ted DiBiase without talking about Virgil, the bodyguard, and in a gimmick that would totally not fly today, the personal assistant slash manservant. Now, for the time that I was really passionate about the WWF was when Virgil was getting towards the end of his period of just being constantly humiliated by Ted DiBiase, at which point he turned face and competed with Ted DiBiase for the $1 Million Championship, won the $1 Million belt, until in another turn of events that was very fitting of that period of wrestling, it was repossessed by the Repo Man. So this Virgil figure, you know, is in okay condition. We've got a bit of paint loss, but that's okay. The figure is a, if I remember correctly, Series 5 1993 release, so a little bit of a later release. And that 1993 period in Virgil's sort of narrative was, from what I remember, you know, him being somewhat of a jobber and being squashed by the likes of Nails and being squashed literally by Yokozuna memorably. So really happy to have the Series 5 1993 Virgil figure in the collection. Alright guys, next we move on to the Series 4 1992 Nasty Boys figures. Now these are probably 2 of the figures that I've been most happy to get my hands on of all my recent pickups for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because obviously the Nasty Boys were a mainstay of the WWF during my childhood. But equally as importantly, I think these guys might just be the best tag team released by Hasbro, you know, during this toy line. I'm not sure that everyone will necessarily agree with me here, but to me, the play poses are spot on, the action features work well, and Hasbro really captured what made the Nasty Boys quite unique at that time, because in a time when WWF was filled with really colorful outfits and you know, everything being neon and lots of different colors and makeup and all these sorts of things. The Nasty Boys had kind of just, for the most part, an all black punk street style gimmick. So that's captured really well. The clothing looks great. Obviously the iconic hairstyles are down pat. And to me, you know, even the facial expressions look nasty. So really happy to get my hands on these guys. All right, so next we go back to Series 5, 1993 for the Warlord figure. Now the Warlord is obviously another sort of cartoony, gimmick heavy character that was quite popular during this period of wrestling. But to me, Hasbro have done a really good job with this figure. It's the right play pose, it captures that powerhouse physique, all the elements of the entrance and wrestling attire for the Warlord during this time have been captured really well. So this was obviously when the Warlord, or after the Warlord split from the Barbarian, you know, in their tag team run, competed as a singles competitor in this black and silver metallic armor mask outfit. All of that's captured really well. One thing that as a kid I would have really liked had I had this figure as a kid would be if the Warlord was released with an accessory of the metallic rod with the W on the top of it that he used to carry to the ring and sometimes use illegally during wrestling matches. Obviously that would have required a different arm to be able to hold that, but that's my only point of, I guess, criticism or area in which I think this figure could be improved. Otherwise, a great figure, some nice detailing, and really happy to have my hands on the Warlord. Now, I mentioned this wrestler previously when I was talking about the $1 Million Man and Virgil, and in particular the repossession of the $1 Million Championship belt, but now we have the Repo Man figure. Now this figure absolutely speaks to this particular period of wrestling. Obviously we have just a character that's purely built on a gimmick. You know, we've got a Repo Man, he's got his little Zorro style mask so he can sneak about. And as a kid, I remember quite enjoying the Repo Man. I didn't second guess it, I didn't overthink it, but I can totally imagine that if I was a little bit older, if I was a young adult when I was watching the WWF, you know, 1992, 1993, I probably would have found this guy pretty hard to take. But that aside, he's a pretty good figure. I have mentioned in previous videos that I really don't like this fused leg spring-loaded torso action feature. I don't like it with the Repo Man because I don't remember the Repo Man being a high flyer. I don't feel like this was necessarily fitting with that character and his performing style. But with that said, waist up, I think it's a good figure. Obviously, we've got some yellowing in the arms, but I mean, that's to be expected with 30-year-old action figures. But torso up, I think, you know, we capture his attire, his face sculpt has a bit of a sneaky sort of devious appearance to it. So, you know, certainly not the worst figure in the collection. Alrighty guys, for the last action figure within this lot of pickups, we fast forward to 1994. We're getting to the latter part of the run of Hasbro WWF action figures with the Series 8 Lex Luger figure. Now obviously this is Lex Luger in his Narcissist gimmick, as he was unveiled by Bobby Heenan at the 1993 Royal Rumble as the most perfect, most beautiful man in the universe. Kind of like a Mr. Perfect slash Ravishing Rick Rude gimmick combined and dialed up to the extreme. And speaking of Mr. Perfect, I remember during my childhood was when the Narcissist version of Lex Luger was feuding with Mr. Perfect, who had been previously managed by Bobby the Brain Heenan. Kind of throughout 1993, towards the latter part of 1993, I think it was, when Lex Luger turned face and adopted the All-American gimmick. A great figure in my opinion. Obviously Hasbro throughout the run of WWF action figures reused parts, reused play poses. This would have been the same play pose that we saw for Virgil, but I mean this play pose, this torso has been used I guess countless times within the Hasbro WWF line, but to me it's the right one to use. You know, Lex Luger was built like a brick shithouse and ripped up, and this captures that really well. We've got all the purple and white detailing of the Narcissist outfit captured nicely. I think the face sculpt is great. The mullet is just glorious. So all in all, a really good figure. And you know, one of the ones that I've been having a little bit of trouble coming by. So very happy to have Lex Luger, the Narcissist Lex Luger, in the collection. And there you have it guys, the most recent batch of WWF Hasbro action figures that I've been able to add to my collection. Now my core kind of objective with the Hasbro WWF collection right now is not just picking figures up willy-nilly. I mean, I'm starting to get all the popular figures secured, and it's now trying to get to some of the harder to come by ones. But what I'm really focusing on doing at the moment is just getting the last couple of figures that I need to get to complete Series 1. I obviously have the $1 Million Man figure now. I have the Big Boss Man complete with Nightstick. He's on his way here. So the last figure that leaves me with is the Series 1 1990 Macho Man Randy Savage figure. I'm eyeing a couple off on eBay. I'm trying to get obviously the right figure in the right condition at the right price. But once I've managed to get that, then I'm going to do my first review video. I'm going to review the whole first wave of 12 Hasbro WWF figures. So that's really where I'm at now as far as the Hasbros go. But you know, there's plenty more things coming up, and I'm going to be sharing with you my Christmas 2020 haul. So I've got a few things that have arrived just in time for Christmas. We've got a mix of action figures, VHS, vintage gaming, all those sorts of things, which I'll share with you. And plenty more to come beyond that. So guys, thanks so much for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it, especially if you're still watching all the way through to this. So thank you very much, guys. Hope you're having, or have, depending on when you view this, a really happy holidays. And as always, guys, if you like this video, please hit that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, please hit that subscribe button. And as always, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and happy to sort of skew my content around those thoughts and opinions in the comment section. So as always, guys, have an amazing day, have a great week, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.